I mean, Steven Dykman, we saw made the finals of our champs this year. The previous year won it and, won our player of the year. Zoe Riederman, someone who's played multiple of our champs now, grinds all these events, and has put up great results for herself in her own right. So this is definitely two skilled, experienced players who are also friends, like they play all these events. They're all there together. They hang out, they get dinner. So I think we're going to have a really great match of Magic, because it does look like Dykman's on a mull to 5 though.
Yeah, but I mean, what a 5 that this looks like. I'm seeing a Mobile, a Urza's Saga, a Haywire Might. I think that might have also been a Malevolent Rumble. Not sure on that one. But Zoe, I mean, one of the best starts you can have with this deck is just going to put a Guide of Souls out on turn 1 on the play. Looks like she might have kept 7 cards here.
Yeah, and I'm curious if Zoe also knew maybe what Dykman was on. It's unclear to me. Maybe, Dykman will definitely has like a very wide range of decks he'll play. I would say he leans a bit more like controlling type stuff, but that's, definitely like by the minorest of degrees. We saw him win our first event 2 years ago playing Team of Rhinos, which, is a tempo deck. So this is definitely, someone with an incredibly wide range. Zoe, really likes aggressive decks. She can play other things. She likes combo. She likes aggro. I've seen her mid-range a bit from time to time, but combat, would say, is Zoe's biggest strength in Magic, as we're having an incredibly fast start here.
Yeah, as we are going to go Mox Opal into Bobble, into Urza's Saga. And then there's the Haywire Might. That is turning on the Mox Opal. And, mull to 5, play 4 cards, turn 1. What a start for Steven.
Yeah, very big there. What I was going to say is Zoe has really leaned her deck into being more aggressive. She has 4 Ragavans in the main deck, which if you've been gone for the last year, might not sound that unique, but a lot of players are down to, 2 or 3 at most, just because of the mirror match. But Zoe really hedging for these sort of other breach deck, other combo decks or Ragavans at its best.
Yeah, as we're going to see an Ocelot Pride come down on turn 2. It's going to trigger the Guide of Souls, gain Zoe a life, get Zoe an energy, and we're going to get a cat token at the end of this click. No second land drop for Zoe. Now, important card spotted in Zoe's hand here is the Thraben Charm. Can be very nice against Steven's deck here.
And I got to call it out real quick. Theo Jung cannot escape our feature match area. From the energy he won last year, you see his energy token on the bottom. And then for winning champs, there's his cat token of his cat stomping him like Bone Crusher Giant on the board. So Theo really hogging the feature match area this weekend, as we do see a shock and a passing back to Zoe.
Yeah, and she's going to play second Ocelot Pride. She may only have 1 land, but she is doing so much with it. Now, that being said, Steven does have Saga on 2 here and does have the ability to make a construct if he wants to start doing that.
Yeah, and, I think Dykman's a little low on gas in hand, but, like you said, these constructs are good. They're going to be very large, and, it's turn 2. So, yeah, you're a little low on gas when you multiply, but you're also, probably about to have multiple 7/7s in play, right? Or, excuse me, 6/6s. So, that's not the worst place to be.
Yeah, as we are going to attack with the Guide of Souls, gonna jump the Guide of Souls using our 3 energy. It's gonna give it flying. This is very important so that Steven Dykman is not able to, make this construct to block the guide. But it looks like we are going to be making it at the end of turn here, as Zoe is going to get 2 cat tokens.
So I think it's worth noting, a lot of times this sort of draw here from the grinding station decks, and we're calling them grinding station, chat. Get over it. I'm just going to say it right now. There's 2 breach decks. It's too confusing. We're calling it station. Cancel me. Anyways, normally that would be really strong. But since we drew the double Ocelot Pride Nile, we could actually chump block these decks ad nauseum, because most players have cut Shadow Spear from this deck. That sort of backup game plan we saw be so popular from Jesse Robkin here on the series. It's just not a thing that's good enough on average these days. But in spots like this, it just puts you in this really weird position where it's like, yeah, these constructs are big. They're going to help me, not die or whatever, but they're not enough to actually win the game on average. So this is going to force Dykman to really play the combo role here.
Yeah, as we are going back over to Steven Dykman's turn, looks like a Malevolent Rumble or Urza's Saga in hand, as we are on our third chapter here, it looks like we're just floating a mana. And it looks like this is going to be the token that we are temporarily using to represent this construct creature. There's at least 2 Flages in Zoe's hand, plus the Thraben Charm that we saw earlier. And it looks like for Steven Dykman is going to be the Aether Spellbomb.
Yeah, and this makes a lot of sense. This is something that can get the guide off the board. Might even be important to like maybe keep a Pride off the board to stop, a bunch of extra cats coming. Also, just a redraw, right? We mentioned how Dykman's sort of forced to play the combo role now. A fair game plan is almost assuredly not going to work out this game. So just, hey, I get a redraw whenever I want instead of bobble with a delay draw might be sort of what Dykman's thinking about here.
Yeah, and it looks like we are tapping down some mana. And we are going to go ahead and do Malevolent Rumble with the mana that we floated earlier. And
Dykman won. Game's over. I'm pretty sure Dykman just won the game. Yeah, and you see Zoe. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. You see Zoe head in hand. She was best friends with Jessie Robkin. She teamed with her with so many events, won so many things in 2022 with this deck on her side. But Dykman just won the game, Niall.
Yeah, why don't you walk us through how Dykman just won the game after casting Malevolent Rumble?
Yeah, I need to double check. I think he has the other mocks in hand, but basically he can play Breach, then using the first Scion and the Opal, then you can escape the station from the graveyard, and then you mill your whole deck and win from there. Now, it looks to me like maybe he doesn't have the Opal that I thought he had in hand, which is my bad. So you won't be able to actually bring it back right away. But we are one card away from, one turn away from winning because we will have that mana unlocked. So, excuse me, I jumped the gun a little bit there. But yeah, I mean, this just shows how powerful this deck can be. And just like how, over the top some of its draws are compared to the rest of the format. If Dykman had either a Mox Amber or a Mox Opal in hand, we would be talking about the sideboards right now. And there's nothing Zoe can do. And you can see Zoe head in her hands. She knows she's like living on a prayer.
Yeah, now, all that being said, as we saw earlier, Zoe does have the Thraben Charm in hand. Now, she doesn't have the mana to cast it just yet. But given that Steven does not appear to be playing Breach this turn, how much do you think that matters? How impactful do you think it is that she'll be able to, if she wants to, answer this Underworld Breach when it comes down?
It's going to be so huge. I mean, there are so few cards in the main deck that actually matter in this matchup. Huge draw step there from Zoe. You nailed it on that. Part of Thraben Charm is it's just really good. It's just like a strong magic card. In this matchup, it's incredible. Blows up the Breach, can hit the graveyard or clear a blocker. All modes you really want. So, had Zoe drawn a land there now, I would say she would actually a huge favorite just to win. Because Dykman would go for the Breach, and barring drawing a second Breach, Dykman would have probably lost the game, as Zoe could either exile the graveyard or kill the Breach, whichever one she thought was best in the situation. But yeah, you see Zoe sort of just tanking, and Dykman saying like, hey, I am going to go for the Breach combo next turn. Like I said, these two players know each other very well. They've been friends for years now. And I think Dykman's basically just saying like, don't worry, Zoe, I will not slow roll you. And I think Zoe's being like, okay, is there anything I can do? Because back when Zoe and, played with Jessie Robkin a bunch and really popularized this deck here on the series, along with Corey Baumeister and Ross Merriam, it used to be a removal spell was good enough. Like this Galvanic Discharge would have killed the Emery, and it wouldn't have guaranteed anything, but it would have been a position where, now the Amber doesn't make mana, and maybe you can force them to replay something and put them behind a little bit. Well, Mox Opal doesn't care about that. It's a card that, just makes mana. So you're seeing Zoe kill the Scion because she's trying to prevent the mana from Dykman, but Dykman's saying, I have the land. Yeah, and there's just not enough pressure on board. This construct can block the 1/2 Emery, and yeah, this 4-color grinding station deck, Niall.
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, keep in mind, Steven Dykman was on a Multi 5 that game, right? Multi 5 played 4 cards turn 1. All right, so Multi 5 play 80% of your hand on the first turn, and Zoe one of the like strongest starts you can have in Boros Energy. Guiding Souls, Ocelot Pride never found that second land. It was never able to really develop that and just got run over by Grinding Station doing what it does.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know we were cutting me. You could see how I was laughing and shaking my head. It's so crazy when you say it too, right? It's like we multiply on the draw against, kind of the best aggressive deck in the format. Now, Zoe didn't have multiple mana, right? But she did have a really, really strong one lander start. And had Zoe drawn that land, like we mentioned, on any of those turns, I think Zoe probably pretty easily wins. I mean, she was kind of closest to lethal there already, so another turn, right? Like, not that crazy to think. And it's just so impressive and really shows, well, hey, if you're playing Portland next weekend or Charlotte in a weekend and a month from now, which is the weirdest way to describe that, you have to be ready for this Breach deck. Even if Breach doesn't do well in Portland, players like me are just going to play it. You can't get me off the deck. I'm going to play it until they take it from me. With starts like that, how are you supposed to win? And that's a 5, like you said, Niall. It's a 5-card hand. No one has a consensus built deck on this, as we should look at our sideboards here. I can talk about this all day. We still don't know what the best build of Breach is.
Yeah, so we're going to take a look at Zoe's Boros Energy list here. Now, I mean, this is, a deck that has been popular and powerful in the format for quite a while. But Mason, what here sticks out to you in Zoe's list?
Okay, so there's a lot of things, and this is a great moment for people who want to learn how to beat the Breach deck. The best way to beat them is to take a bunch of different avenues of attack and make it so that they can't just have one sideboard card that solves all their issues theoretically. So you're seeing Zoe do that in real time here. We have Ghost Vacuum, something that's not the greatest, but can come up and can be a bit of an issue. She might not even side that one in, but you could. It's like a fine way to break up something sometimes in the middle of their win condition. You get that. It can be a little awkward. We saw how, Dykman needed an opal there to win on that one turn where I thought he had it. Well, that was in the yard, so we could get it. We see Stony Silence. That's a back-breaking card in this matchup. High impact. Orange Chance, actually, another really great card. Your opponent casts a Breach. In response, you cast Orange Chant. They can't cast any more spells. You've essentially countered the Breach, and now you sort of get to go back to yourself there. Huge upgrade there. Wear Tear, very similar. Destroys an artifact or an enchantment or both if you have the mana. That's going to make it really hard to combo. That's also something that can fight over these Urza Saga lands for their fair game plan and their tutor package. And then Blood Moon is a card you can have as well. That's going to turn off the Urza Saga, make your mana a little bit harder. That's another one where I could see Zoe maybe doesn't want to have that one when she's on the draw. Like I mentioned with Ghost Vacuum, it isn't as high impact, but it is something that can be a huge thorn in the side of these Breach players. And that's the best thing you can do. Do not go all in on I'm on 4 Stonies in a dream. Sometimes it'll work out, but they will know this and they will have these cards that can fight over these things. Breach players come prepared to fight over everything post-board.
Yeah, so we're going to jump over to Steven's list real quick before we get back into our match. And as you said, this deck is not settled. There's not really a stock version of it yet. It has evolved and iterated so much. We see Steven Dykman on the 4-color version. We've got this one Teferian here. We've got a Lavinia. We've got some interesting choices here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Lavinia, by the way, it really shows what Dykman thinks about the format. Main deck hate card. As these players are almost done really quickly on our sideboard, we're going to want to bring in the cards that stop things like Stony Silence. We know those are coming. We want to bring in the creature interaction, stuff like Unholy Heat. And you're going to want to sort of fight those games. Prismatic Ending is a great way to kill a creature, great way to kill a sideboard card. That's what the white's really bringing to the package here, is you have more powerful answers to some sideboard cards. I should say more catch-all answers, the better way to describe it. And Savine's Reclamation, which is a very powerful thing to have in your main deck for comboing. If we get there, we'll get there on that one.
Yeah, so you're going to get into our game 2 here. Zoe on the play. It's going to start with a Ragavan this time. Another very strong start for Zoe's deck.
Yeah, and we were saying it before. This is the kind of matchup where you want Ragavan. In the creature matchups these days, Ragavan always had the issue of can't beat a Young Wolf, for example, right? It's part of why we saw Yawgmoth rise to prominence. Well, Dykman's deck, a bunch of its creatures outside Tameo, you don't really want to be blocking with early. And that mana advantage for Zoe, even if this is a one-lander, if that Ragavan connects once, it could be the difference.
Yeah, it looks like Steven going to go ahead and play a Bobble. Look at his own card here. Looks like Steven Dykman on an opening of 7 cards, which I mean, that's gotta feel scary if you're Zoe. Like, you just got, cleaned up by a mult of 5. When you see that same opponent keep 7,
Mhm.
that's intimidating. As we're gonna go ahead and fetch after the bobble. Steven must not have liked what he saw on top there.
Steven almost presented the deck without getting the search there for the land. Was just shuffling. I knew the top card of my deck is one that I did not want. And you're gonna get another look. And I gotta say, this is like a huge part of the deck is like, when do you bobble? Knowing to like bobble who, like, do I surveil now or do I keep it for later because I need to maybe make A, B come together? There's a lot of selection and a lot of choices with this deck. Now you can play a lot of cards from your graveyard with this deck, as we see the Mox Amber get binned, but yeah, it is a lot of like little decisions that can really add up.
Yeah, as we're going to see the Ragavan attack. It's going to be a Haywire Might picked up for Zoe off the Ragavan. What a hit! Of all the cards in Dykman's deck that you could hit. Wow. And the treasure token to be able to pop it when you need to. This puts Steven in such an awkward position.
Yeah, so you're seeing Zoe very wisely here. She knows her land for turns to survey a land, so she wants to do that before she fires off this Haywire Might. It's like you're saying, incredible, and like, even if it isn't your best play mana wise this turn, I personally would be so tempted, to get this Haywire Might down on the board. Looks like Zoe is going to go with Guide of Souls first, but yeah, she does get the Haywire Might, and she's lost the green, but still, like, if we ever get a way to do that again, like another Ragavan connection, this is a card you would sideboard in if you had it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Zoe must be thrilled to be able to play this Guide of Souls into this Haywire Might.
Oh my God, Niall. Steven has Aether Spellbomb in hand. He can bounce the Haywire Might to his hand.
The value.
I don't even know if that's that good, but if it was me, I'd be so tempted. Be like, I'm on the feature match area. Look how smart.
Yeah, Spire of Industry going to be the land for Dykman this turn, as we're going to play a Malevolent Rumble, flipping a Tamio, Bobble, and Emery. And is that another Bobble?
Tough decision here. I can't quite make out a lot of Dykman's hand, but it does look like he's a little land heavy. Now, I know one of those lands is Boseiju, and that's definitely playing the role of a spell this game. So it might look like Dykman only has, 3 mana value worth of cards in hand currently, but, you can make a strong argument that his hand does have a decent number of spells.
Yeah, so we're going to pick up the Emery, put the rest in the yard. We've got this one little Scion. Now, do you think this Scion is on Ragavan blocking duty?
I could totally see it. It does like give you these like jump ahead kills. I'll tell you what, it might be on dying to bombardment duty.
Yeah, we are going to see Goblin Bombardment come down, and Zoe happy to throw away this Haywire Might to get rid of the Scion there and get in with this Guide of Souls, this Ragavan.
Yeah, I mean, Zoe gains 2 life for her troubles as well. It's very tempting to want to hold that card for forever. But like you're saying, if Dykman blocks the Scion there, there's an Emery coming down. So the Emery might, block the Ragavan as well. Then you never get the green. Then you feel kind of silly. Instead of getting this treasure and potentially getting a card that matters, you ended up hitting a land for Dykman, but there's only so many stations in the deck. Dykman probably brought in his Jace in this matchup as the backup win condition, but theoretically, he might have decided to err on the side of a little bit of greed, not play around surgical extraction. You hit it, and you might be, not worrying about combo for the rest of the game.
Sure.
You won't know that, right? Because you don't know the sideboarding, but Dykman does, and he might play way differently. So a lot of little edges just to hitting with Ragavan.
Right, and now Zoe also has Wear Tear and the Thraben Charm in hand, which might be part of why she was happy to just throw away this Haywire Might. And I wonder if that is something that Steven might pick up on.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Dykman definitely knows that it's either a big sign of strength or a big sign of weakness there for Zoe, right? And I think the coming turns will give Dykman a lot of information about that, because the Haywire Might is good to have on the board. So
wow, and what a pull for Dykman here. on this Malevolent Rumble, getting an Urza Saga, Bauble Portable Hole, and Mox Opal. Once again, spoiled for choice.
Yeah, and this is a really tough one. We know that, Emery is face-up information for all the players. We can see the rest of Dykman's hand. We know there's like a station, a soul guide, and a spell bomb, some lands, two Bosages actually. So lots of ways to fight through Stonies type cards, but Zoe doesn't have that half of the hate. Zoe has the instant sorcery half, and this is what we were talking about during sideboarding. When you diversify and you're not all in on something like Stony Silence, Rest in Peace type cards, it makes it harder for Dykman to sort of have the right things at the right time.
Yeah, as we are going to pick up the Mox Opal. We have the Scion now. And Dykman looks like choosing to play this Mox Opal, I think, to keep himself at 7 cards in hand. Looks like we are going to be sacrificing the Scion, make a little mana. And there is the Aether Spell Bomb. Still 1 artifact short on the Mox Opal being online.
Interesting. Yeah, here we go. We're going to throw away a Boseiju to get the Soul Guide down to unlock the Emery.
Yeah, Soul Guide Lantern being played here, which is going to turn on the Mox Opal, which is going to make Emery castable. And we are going to hit a breach in the yard there. Lands on the Emery Mill. And Zoe going to fetch at the end of Dykman's turn here.
Yeah, normally banning Underworld Breach, not the end of the world, but shifting Woodlands, a big add to this deck from the release of Modern Horizons 3, means that Dykman does sort of have a pseudo copy of Breach available to him once he draws that card. And there's still Savine's Reclamation, a card I alluded to, one of the big reasons to maybe play these 4-color builds of the deck, allowing you to have a little bit more protection from interaction. It means that if we draw that card, that's a 3-mana version of Underworld Breach we can play from our graveyard.
Yeah, as Zoe going to grab a Surveil land here. As we get back over to her turn, then Ocelot Pride as the draw for turn. Well, this is very interesting. We've got the Bombardment, we've got the Pride, we've got Thraben Charm and the Wear Tear. And that's Zoe's entire hand here.
Yeah, looks like Zoe's plan might not be to attack this turn, or if it is, maybe just Ragavan.
Yeah, as looks like looking at the Thraben Charm here to take care of the Emery and get an attack in with the Guide and the Ragavan.
Yeah, and
that's going to hit a Tamio.
That's a big one.
Looks like Zoe counting her permanents. We've got 6, 7, 8, 9. So playing Tamio and then getting the cat token, Zoe will get a cat token and a treasure token. She'll have the City's Blessing. Is that correct?
I believe so. Yeah, the players are counting. I'm having a little bit of a hard time following.
Yeah. Zoe surely, making sure to, use the treasure token from last turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Zoe gets an energy and a life for the Tamio as well. But yeah, I do believe the cat will be the 10th City's Blessing, and then you will get, everything else from the way the ability resolves. But I maybe miscounted. Obviously, these players are double checking. Yeah, it looks like they agree there will be a City's Blessing as the cat resolves. More life, more things. Tough place to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like this play a lot from Zoe too, thinking about it more. I was a little hesitant to use Thraben Charm, such a powerful sideboard card, but Zoe realizing I could hold this card up, or, I still have one piece of interaction. Dykman clearly doesn't have it fully set up yet. I can force him to have to get to it next turn instead of maybe giving him a few more draw steps to get there.
Yeah. Zoe really doing a good job of putting the pressure on Dykman here. He's going to draw another grinding station. Not quite what he needs. Or sorry, that might have been a Mox Opal. Yeah, it looks like it was a Mox Opal.
I think Dykman might just be dead unless these free draws can get there.
Sure, looks like we're going to be tapping this Mox Opal.
Yeah, this is a sign to me that we're probably going to see a popping of one of these artifacts. So we're just going to use the Opal mana now. I think Dykman's trying to figure out, do I need to play this second Opal before I pop in case of like some wild chain of hits of like Malevolent Rumble into a thing. My gut is you probably have to if you're going to win. But, with no Whip Flare type card in the sideboard for Steven, Zoe, I think she's sweating both board clear and a combo kill. As another Mox.
As we're going to pop the Soul Glide Lantern here. Draw a card. So taking a look at Dykman's graveyard. I mean, it feels like Zoe just has this one wrapped up, but let's see if Dykman can get out of it.
Yeah, I think Dykman might have made an uncharacteristic misstep not playing second Opal. Due to the fact that we don't have a Wrath, I think we just had the combo this turn, and I think having the mana up front is good in case spots like this come up. But it looks like it's going to be okay because there is the station trigger from the floating Opal mana before. But I don't know if Dykman... I think it's just one draw step now that we had to play the station first, instead of having something like Malevolent Rumble to maybe get us there.
Yeah, so I mean, Zoe, did a very good job of spotting that she needed to put Dykman on this sort of clock and not give him any of that extra time. And it's like she's probably going to be rewarded for the pressure she was able to put on him.
Yep. And also, we're talking about all this. If Dykman gets there, Zoe does have Wear Tear up. And I don't know if Dykman can actually beat that. We're going to see Grinding Station activate to mill Zoe 3. This to me looks like, let me see how many sideboard cards I can spot.
Sure. So we're going to mill a few. Get the new Mox Opal down. Float some mana.
Yeah. Dykman did miss the Grinding Station untap triggered to itself. Got to remember that card counts itself. This is me giving Dykman a hard time, by the way. In case you can't get
mill Zoe again.
All right.
Zoe no sideboard cards there.
Yeah, maybe Zoe didn't sideboard. That'd be great news for Dykman. Oh, maybe Dykman's trying to get the mill you a bunch, but sage you to also see how many basics you got, Yeah. All right. I mean, this is the moment Dykman needs to redraw if we're going to actually try and win.
But can he get it? I mean, Zoe just feels so locked up. And that's going to be it. That is going to be game 2 going to Zoe Riederman. We are going to have a game 3 in this match, Mason.
It's very impressive stuff here. And, it really shows, too, like, how these energy decks are getting better at sideboarding versus these breach decks. When we last saw the energy versus breach matchup before the unbanning without Opal, matchup was pretty heavily favored to the Grinding Station deck. Part of that had to do with the One Ring, that was a card that was in these energy decks and not a huge factor for them in the matchup. And they didn't have a lot of cards for the breach players. And the breach players had the One Ring, obviously, to buy time, draw to their sideboard cards. So very huge impact. But as time goes on, we need to adapt to the metagame. These players are finding more and more cards that overlap kind of across all of Modern, while situationally hitting the breach deck. I think that's always been a big issue for the breach deck. One they can overcome very consistently, but it is something you have to be very cognitive of. Is like, hey, I'm a deck that's weak to artifacts, hate, enchantment, hate, graveyard hate. I got a little better against creature hate with Mopal being unbanned, but not that much. I still kind of need them in some percentage of games. So a lot of sideboard cards can go the distance against this deck if you use them correctly and have the right mixture. And that last part there, the mixture, is where I think so many players have the awkward part of like they keep a hand. It's like, wear tear, stony 4 lands or whatever, or maybe it's like a mulligan. They keep that. And sometimes you have to do that. But with no clock, this deck can just, very easily play a fair game, or given its time, it can answer all those kind of threats.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a really hard part about playing against the grinding station decks is it is really hard to know at any point in the game sort of what gear you're supposed to be in. Like, am I supposed to be respecting and trying to control their ability to combo? Am I supposed to be putting clock and pressure on them? And I think Zoe showed a really excellent skill in navigating, shifting between those gears throughout that game. I think she did a very good job of paying respect to it when she needed to and putting pressure on when she needed to, and really hoping that we can see her continue that into the final game of this match. As we get down to it in just a moment here, looks like our players are just about ready to dive into it. But I mean, either way, we've seen very good magic from both these players. Very excited to see this match go down and figure out which one of them is going to be 2-0 going into our round 3 at our 10K Modern Showdown here in Chicagoland.
Yeah, I'm really interested. I'm also interested to see how the players continue to adapt. Like a card we saw a few weeks back that maybe was a little ahead of its time, maybe just isn't that great in the deck, was Orm's Chant from these white builds from Dykman. Well, if players are going to start playing more instants, right, and things that are there to respond to the breaking up of Breach, that's a great card to bring in and sort of be like, I'm a lead on Orm's Chant. Do you have a response? If you don't, you're going to die. It adds 1 mana to your combo. It's a little situational, but it overlaps in other, oh my God, matchups. How's this for a turn 1? Stormcap 4, Nile.
Oh my God. Mox Opal, Mox Amber, Mishra's Bauble, Urza's Saga, Malevolent Rumble.
Was
5 cards played. 4 of them start with the letter M.
Follow the money.
We're going to see a Tamio, 2 Mox Opals, and a Flooded Strand off of this Rumble here.
Did Dykman have the win if his last card in hand was Station instead of Haywire Might? He was very close, I think, to actually having a turn 1 win.
That is crazy. Yeah, he does have Haywire Might and Underworld Breach.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to lead on Emery instead of Rumble to often win, but also Rumble only costs 1 mana. But yeah, I think Dykman was dangerously close to the fabled turn 1 here.
Wow. I mean, Zoe already in such an impossible position. Trying to take a look at her hand here, see if she's got any of her hate pieces. I'm not seeing that. Oh, I think there is a Thraben Charm, but that seems way too slow now.
Yeah, you know what? Your 2 mana card just wasn't good enough. It's a real statement on things, as it might end up actually being pretty good here. But Zoe, yeah, she kept a hand that's a little slower, and can play the kind of more the fair game here on the draw. And it looks like Dykman's wanting to play a game similar to that.
Yeah, it looks like as we are going to, tick up our Urza's Saga, Zoe gonna fetch for a Surveil land here.
Yeah, so a lot of things going on here. One, great heads up play, I think, from Dykman's side. My opponent is playing a deck with a lot of really good ones that they want to draw. I've seen a couple of Ragavans from my milling and the playing of the games. So I know that's something. So clearly Zoe kept cards that are good against me. Might be Stony Silence, might be Wear Tear. So I'm going to try and get this value from the construct, from my saga here, excuse me. And then if my opponent fetches a Surveil land, I'm going to make a construct to play around Wear Tear, getting my fetch land activation on the stack and blowing up the saga. So really heads up play here from Dykman. And just sort of doing a great job of showing just how much this deck can play around so many different types of hate while still presenting that I can kill you out of nowhere draw.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, really forcing Zoe into this position of having to respect the combo and, not really free to do what her deck does best.
Yep. Yeah. So
Although she
Dykman,
is going to go ahead and cast this Ajani, make a cat.
yep. And now Dykman gets to make the construct, played around, everything. I think a lot of players just would have passed the turn and not fetched ahead of time, but that's why Steven Dykman was both our champ and player of the year, the 2023.
Yeah, these constructs are going to be huge. Amazing. Like this one is already a 4/4, about to be a 3/3 with this bobble pop. But if we make another one, fetch something, it's going to be like swinging for 5 next turn.
Yeah, it's going to be massive. And it looks like Dykman picked up Teferi 3. And that's a very interesting one. Not only is it a way to, get this Ajani potentially off the board for a bit, if you want to go that direction, but it also is a way of, I talked about Orm's Chant, right? This 1 mana way to make it so your opponent can't combo on your turn. Well, Teferi means you're not even able to cast anything. So that could be a great way to start protecting our combo. I'm curious to see how Dykman wants to play it here.
Yeah, very, very interesting here as we are back over to Dykman. 2 breaches, another Malevolent Rumble, Haywire Might, Teferi in hand.
I think Dykman's really close to winning with protection up. Now, obviously, we know Dykman doesn't really need protection because we know Zoe's hand, but Steven's probably thinking about cards like Surgical Extraction. That's a card that's very much on these 4-color players' minds. It's sometimes not good enough. Sometimes it's backbreaking. It's especially tough if you can get the station out of the deck. But I think Dykman has the ability to kind of flip. There's a lot of ways to play this turn. We could see a contract activation. We could also see activate my Opal, make a white mana, float a mana off Saga, search my deck for another Opal, Legend Rule, play this Teferi, cast Rumble, and if I hit station, I win with Teferi up.
Yeah, as looks like we are going to be floating the mana off of the Urza Saga as we go through here.
And it looks like Dykman decided not to do the Opal aggressive line that I talked about, but taking a different one.
Looks like Spell Bomb, top card of Dykman's deck.
If you wanted it so bad, friend, you could just wait a turn. You didn't need to go through all that.
The impatience of some of these grinding station players.
Kids these days.
All right, so you're going to get Spellbomb onto the field. Got a mana floating from the Saga still. Then tapping our land and our Mox Opal. Could it be Teferi time?
I think it might be Teferi time.
As Teferi go ahead and gets played. It's like we were bouncing the cat token. Another Malevolent Rumble picked up for Dykman here. Sacrificing the Scion to play Haywire Might.
And this might look a little odd to you, right? Like there's a Mox Amber in play. This is just saying that Dykman really wants to leave the Spell Bomb activation up in order to protect, either the Teferi or potentially stop an Ajani from getting flipped. Zoe might try to do something like, get another cat into play or maybe Legend Rule Ajanis. That's a great way to flip it, is just have another Ajani. And then if Zoe were to do that, we can bounce it with Spell Bomb. So you're seeing Dykman here, even though stuck on mana, quote unquote, with our 2 Moxen in play, is sort of saying like, hey, I value, doing this over having the Scion in another land.
Yeah, as we see Zoe shocking Anna Foundry here, playing a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, getting the 2/2 Goblin Shaman token onto the board. Also want to take a quick moment to thank everyone for watching this stream. These are such incredible productions of Paper Magic, which is just such a wonderful thing to get to keep alive. And remember, if you want to see all the rest of the events that are being broadcast later this year, hit that follow button on Twitch. And hey, maybe even subscribe. Looks like we are going to bounce away the Goblin Shaman token with our Spell Bomb. We're upticking to Fairy, playing Urza's Saga.
I mean, Dykman has 2 Malevolent Rumbles in hand and 2 Underworld Breaches. We're definitely casting a Rumble this turn.
Yeah, as we go ahead and cast this Rumble.
There's
We've got
Sabine.
Reclamation, Flooded Strand, Emery, and Bauble. Taking Emery into hand, it seems.
Yeah, I really like this. Your Sabine says flashback, so go into the graveyard. I mean, you can't even take it, but like it going there means you have like, so yeah, you see Zoe wants to read it. It going there is kind of nice. And that means if you play Emery as well, you have a lot of like ability to kind of, play these cards from your yard, represent threats if they get answered. There's a
And there's
station.
Grinding Station and another Emery in the yard. A lot of ways for Steven Dykman to churn through the deck there.
Well, I believe the game's over now because you can use the Opal and the Scion to play your Underworld Breach. Then you start escaping Mox Opals, and then you play your Grinding Station, and you have so many cards. It looks like Dykman doesn't agree with me. Maybe I'm missing something, but it looks like there's more than 9 cards in the graveyard that aren't the Opals.
Sure. I mean, maybe once again trying to respect the Surgical.
Well, with the Fairy in play,
oh sure,
yeah, it's actually, this is sort of a moment I think now of Dykman feeling like, I don't know. Actually, I'll be honest. I think Dykman just missed it. This deck's hard to play. I'm not going to act like it's not hard to play. I'm not going to act like there's not like something. I'm not going to try and come up with some crazy line. I think Dykman just made an oopsie.
Stony Silence.
Yeah.
An oopsie that might cost him
2 mana being floated here.
Sure, perhaps casting this Rumble.
Yeah, Rumble with Teferi on instant speed is a great way to potentially find something like a Boseiju here, create another blocker. Now, we know Zoe has Wear Tear in hand and Thraben Charm. We can't do anything in response, but does Zoe have a land to exile the yard after Dykman's committed so much to it? Because she might, feel like she needs to.
She does. Oh, there's a Boseiju.
All right. Dykman, like Boseiju, will endure.
Right.
Do it, Riederman. Blow that land up. Yes.
Zoe blowing up the Saga here. I'm playing a Surveil land.
Yeah, and Dykman has the win. Does he see the win? Now, I guess to be fair, the Stony Silence might be causing a bit more of an issue, but I'm pretty sure, with the Embryon play, the Boseiju costs 1. You do that, you use your Amber mana, you play your Breach, you Opal, you station, we go and you win the game.
Right. So we Boseiju here.
And I think Zoe declining the search because she left the card on top with the Surveil. She knows what she has there and doesn't want to lose it. Now, we know some different losing about to happen.
So we are floating a little bit of mana.
One thing to note, too, is even if we had a lower graveyard, this Emery does give us 1 more Mox. You just, cast the Mox from the yard. So, yeah, and it is all face up here. Dykman just needs to prove there's one in the deck. I wouldn't be surprised if we just see hey, Zoe, here's the deck in a second, especially with Teferi in play. There's nothing that can really happen. The only card in Magic that is commonly played that could win here is a Boseiju that could get this breach. But we also know Dykman has another breach in hand that would just go again. And here's a station. If you haven't seen this combo before, basically what happens is Grinding Station, first it enters the battlefield, it sees itself entering, it creates a trigger. You sacrifice one of your opals, mill yourself for 3. Then it untaps, you recast the opal, float a mana, do it again. Do it again, do it again, do it again. Your whole deck's gone, and you cast Thassa's Oracle or Jace, Unraveler of Mysteries, and win the game by having no cards left in your deck.
Yeah, as we are seeing Dykman going through this combo now.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. I imagine this might be a moment too where Zoe might be like, for coverage, I'm gonna let you like do your thing, yeah, and like we'll just demonstrate this for a second here and then flip it over. Both these players knows what's happening, and yeah, Dykman's like, I have it in my deck. Oh, there it is. Actually got milled. So, congratulations to Steven Dykman there.
Yeah, huge congratulations to him. I've obviously a skilled pilot in, as you said earlier, a very hard deck to pilot, and very well played from Zoe as well, going up against this deck that is the sort of current boogeyman of the format. She played very well. It was able to secure that game too, but ultimately Dykman taking it down, going to be 2-0 going into our round 3. And I think here in a moment we're going to get to talk with Steven Dykman about that match. Mason, what were kind of your thoughts and impressions of seeing that?
I mean, I think it showed just like why this deck is something to be so afraid of, and like it's a really a reminder to me of like why I'm so strongly advocating for this deck so often. When people ask like what should I play, like, hey, you should learn the breach deck. It is very strong. We saw some incredibly fast starts there, and well, yeah, game 2, we kind of got beat up a little bit by some hate cards of pressure. It's clearly not unbeatable, and if you maybe build your deck a little differently, you could fight over some of those things. It's a deck that can adapt to what's going on. It's not something like, let's talk about maybe the mono blue Belcher combo deck, right? That deck can do some little things. It has access to all the blue and colorless cards in Magic, but it can't really play a different game plan. This deck can be Urza Constructs Beatdown. It can be a combo deck. It can be a control deck where you're Teferiing and Holy Heating and you Underworld Breach to get your kill spell back a few times. I've done that a lot myself. I just play a Breach and I'm like, heat, 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 go. Just like you can play a lot of different games, and that's really showing. And just also shows like you need to have the hate very quickly against this deck. This deck's best draws with that disruption. That's just really hard to do when it has draws like that. Now, I would also argue that Dykman, game 3 draw especially was like near the top range of best draws we can have. I was talking about how it was a card away from a turn 1 win. So that's clearly going to be very indicative of a strong start, but it really shows this deck is great and something that, I highly encourage you to pick up and play if you're playing one of these RCs and you want to. I know it's hard, but you can do it. Even the best players in the world make mistakes here and now. I've watched a lot of players like Jesse Robkin here play this deck in the past, Corey Baumeister. Sometimes you make little mistakes about how much you play this deck. That's always going to happen in Magic. But who doesn't make mistakes that often is Steven Dykman. Steven, how you doing, bud? Congratulations on being 2-0.
Hey, thanks, man. Yeah, thanks. That intro was really nice. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, so, this deck's pretty nuts. Really, the first time I've played it was actually today. The moto lag has been pretty brutal lately, so it's been really hard to play these decks on moto. So I was testing a lot of Boros energy this week, but basically my teammate Raja Suleiman for tomorrow was kind of like, I think we need to play Team or Breach. It's too busted, and so I had somebody make me the 4-color version. But yeah, I mean, I think it was pretty clear how broken the deck can be on turn 1 of game 3 there. I mean, I'm just playing a 2-mana spell that ramps me and draws me a card on turn 1 and have a Saga in play on turn 1, and my opponent has no permanents in play, and yeah, we're kind of able to win through a pretty good amount of hate pieces there. Teferi was pretty brutal for her not being able to do stuff at instant speed, so it was kind of just the deck firing on all cylinders, to be honest. We didn't win super fast, but like it was a pretty brutal game.
Did you realize on turn 1 you were 1 card away from the turn 1 win?
I didn't actually realize that, but that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So
yeah.
that's a little telling. Maybe, who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, very explosive start there in game 3, but I mean, also game 1, like, you had a mull to 5,
Yeah.
which against a lot of decks, people are like, "Ah, sorry." But when you go mull to 5, play 4 cards turn 1, I mean, just such a good demonstration of how resilient and explosive this deck can be.
Yeah, what's also
Uh,
really wild too is game 1. I mean, it's a non-open decklist tournament, so I actually assumed she
mhm.
would be on a breach deck. So that's why
Mm.
I kept Haymire Might instead of I had the option to keep like an Aether Spellbomb. Aether Spellbomb would have been way better against energy. Like this is like my hand's even better game 1 if I know what my opponent's deck is. And so I mean I think that speaks to the power of it too. I would have definitely taken a permanent that like can't get interacted with, right? Because she could have shut off my Opal if she kills that
Yeah.
Haywire Might game 1, and then I probably lose for sure. But fortunately, she didn't have that, obviously. So
Yeah,
That's
and I mean, I know you said you haven't had a chance to do a ton of testing with the deck, but are there any decks in particular going into this weekend that you are more concerned about running into? Is it mostly just the mirror? How are you feeling?
yeah, I mean, yeah, the mirror is I guess probably one. I know Sewer is the black white deck that Theo did really well with online a couple times, and I think he's playing it today. I think we got to see him round 1, but
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I think that deck on paper, it wouldn't seem like it'd be that bad for Breach, but the math says that matchup is bad for Breach, so I'm not really sure what the deal is there, but that deck's supposed to be hard for Breach, so I guess I'd prefer to not see that one. And yeah, the mirror. I mean, it's inevitable. I'll play the mirror. I mean, it's just
Sure.
a lot of people are playing this deck, so I kind of expect the mirror. The part of the reason I'm doing the 4-color build is it's supposed to be favored into the mirror. So um, the main deck Lavinia is obviously quite good, and Teferi can be sweet, and the white cards carry some good weight there. So hopefully I'll be good in the mirror too. But yeah, I don't think this deck is honestly too afraid of too much. It's just really really powerful and pretty broken, and yeah, we'll see how long this one lasts in modern, but as long as it's an option, yeah, it's a really good one for people to learn and play, I think. So
I mean, it sounds to me like the question I have to ask, I know the answer to, but I'll ask it for people at home. A lot of people are watching this weekend, Dykman.
yeah,
We know we have Portland next weekend. We
yep,
have Charlotte the weekend after that. Oh, so the month after that, pardon me.
yep.
I don't know if you're playing that event or not, but it sounds to me like you're basically saying like, I'm sorry, Breach is, one of the best decks, a really strong endorsement. You mentioned wanting to test energy. How do you feel about like going into an event like that with, choosing these decks? It seems like you're kind of thumbs upping both of them,
Yeah,
but hearing you talk, it sounds like you should play Breach.
yeah, I think Breach is like probably the deck to beat right now. I do think the black white deck is really good, but I think that deck also requires like a lot of. I think you really want to play that deck a lot. That deck's like you get a lot of choice. I mean, Breach is kind of that way too. All these decks like have decisions, but like Energy and Breach are the decks are just so obscenely powerful that like they can kind of just win on their own. Black White is not that way. Black White, like you really got to maneuver and set yourself up to win. So I think if you were going to play Black White, you'd want to test that one a lot. But yeah, I kind of think those are like probably the top 3 decks. Titan is obviously still always there and good, and we see Dom have a lot of success with that. I know my buddy Kyle is playing that today. Kyle Gonzalez, he plays a lot of Amulet too, and if you're a very good Amulet pilot, that's still a good option. But yeah, I mean, if you're not playing Breach, you better have a good reason to not play Breach is kind of the thing. So, and you better have a good amount of hate for it in Portland, because I think it'll be one of the most played decks. It seems to kind of be the talk of the community right now. So, yeah, that would kind of be my advice.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us here in the booth. It was great to talk to you. Go relax, have some fun,
Appreciate
and
it.
we'll see you in the future rounds.
Thanks a lot, man.
Bye.
See ya.
Yeah, I mean, great to hear from Steven Dykman there after expertly piloting this deck into a 2-0 going into our 3rd round, which, speaking of our 3rd round, it'll be here before you know it. We are going to take a quick little break. Don't go anywhere. Make sure to hit follow on the Twitch channel. We'll be right back with more Magic.